Speaking of civil discourse,
Yep.
one of the issues that we seem to not be able to have any civil discourse on is how to handle immigration in the U.S., illegal immigration in particular. And you wrote about it today. The way that has been handled in Trump 2.0, it was a winning issue for him. It was an issue he had overwhelming support, but the way the administration has handled it, it has now turned into an issue that is flipping on the Trump administration.
Yeah, the polls indicate that, and you're right. That was immigration, border security, big issue to help him win election, right? And he started out pretty strong on this front, securing the border. People aren't just flowing across the border, the Mexican-U.S. border. So he was winning points on that, and he was delivering on a campaign promise. Then it's mass deportation. Well, it's one thing to say we're going to get people in this country out illegally, but what does that look like? Well, you're seeing now what it looks like when you begin to do that. And Minnesota is an example of how things can go terribly wrong. And the polls, and I cited this in a commentary today, cite a big change in how people perceive Trump on this issue. A Reuters poll after the shootings found 39% approve of the job Trump is doing on immigration, 39%. A YouGov poll, 55% of Americans have very little confidence in ICE. A Fox News poll determined that most voters question ICE tactics. 59% characterized ICE as too aggressive. And also, the administration's hurt itself with coming out with misleading statements and outright lies about these tragedies. And Americans can look at the video themselves and see, wait a minute, what I saw was people in uniforms with masks shooting Americans. And that offends sensibilities. Maybe not among the MAGA hardcore, but certainly among independents.
Well, I think context is important. I think that video is important because when I look at it, at least what I see someone who was trying to protest. I did not see the brandishing of a weapon. I saw someone carrying a gun, which he has a right to do, didn't brandish it. I saw an ICE officer push someone and him try to step between. So those actions, when you look at those numbers and the way those numbers are moving, I'm not surprised based on those actions.
Right,
because
right.
I think a person who tries to be dispassionate, Hoppy, to your point, and look at what happened, clearly would not be one that would say, oh,
that
wow.
doesn't look like
Yeah.
what they again, I'm generalizing, but
Sure.
I think a lot of people who look at it somewhat objectively, or even some Trump supporters might say, that doesn't look like a domestic terrorist to me.
No.
Right? So that's where things don't fit together. So, and also consider this, when I did this show for years, I don't know how many times when we talked about gun issues, people would call up and say, and gun rights people would say, we need guns because it's in the Second Amendment, and we need to protect ourselves from an overzealous government. Well, what did you see in Minnesota to the point where the NRA kind of came out and go, well, the guy had a license, had a gun.
Yeah.
I mean, he was so. So I think the administration's handled this wrong, and now you see them backing off and trying to retool on this issue. But point being is that immigration was a big winning issue for Trump, and now a lot of that support is dissipated.
I would add to that, Hoppy, and I think adds to those numbers. Also, the administration's handled it wrong. I think Kristi Noem has been a failure as DHS secretary, but also when you have these Democrat-run cities that will not cooperate with ICE. They arrest somebody who has committed a crime, who has a detainer on them or has been identified as illegal. If they're not cooperating with ICE, then this is what you end up with. There is no other way to go get those. So you're casting a wide net, which brings in mistakes, which brings in these confrontations, and not to mention the rhetoric that turns up the heat a ton. If you have people out comparing ICE to the Gestapo, that also turns up the heat. You get these bad images on television. All to say, I think everybody's handled it poorly.
Well, and look, I get that point, and you're right. And I heard someone talking about the fact that some people have forgotten how to peacefully protest, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, some people have forgotten the lessons of Martin Luther King and civil disobedience, right? And so that reflects poorly. And as you say, if Democratic-led cities aren't cooperating, that reflects poorly. And I think that is part of the polarization. Oh, the Democratic cities aren't cooperating. Oh, the far right, the administration is doing this. I'm more talking about the middle. I don't know if those minds can be changed on either extreme. I'm talking about there is still a middle out there who just look at the video and look at the comments and go, that doesn't look like America to me.
Is this a wake-up call for the middle to become more vocal? Because if you harken back to the days under George H.W. Bush or Reagan, they talked about amnesty. They talked about closing the border and for people that are here already figuring something out. I don't hear that. Maybe that's the sensible center that needs to step forward and take the conversation.
Well, there was a bill during the Biden administration by, gosh, who's the Oklahoma senator? I can't think
I'm
of it.
blanking too.
Okay. The Oklahoma senator, who's one of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, who worked months and crafted a bill that started to revise immigration policy in this country. Because the joke is, what's your thought about our immigration policy? And the answer is, what is our policy, right? I mean, it's all over the place depending on who's president. And it got killed. It got killed by Republicans when Trump said, don't pass this bill. Because why? Because immigration was a winning issue for him. So, look, you need a secure border, and you need, in defense of what the administrations said they wanted to do, is you need to get people out of the country who are here illegally and criminally and doing actions criminally. If you're talking about rounding up everybody who's just in the country illegally, you're going to have more Minneapolises.